Dwayne Johnson was not born into comfort. He was born into pressure, into expectation, into a legacy that weighed heavy before he ever lifted a single weight, long before the world knew him as The Rock, before the box office records, before the roaring crowds and million-dollar smiles. He was just a kid moving from place to place, watching his parents struggle, learning early that stability was never guaranteed. His father, Rocky Johnson, was a professional wrestler. His grandfather, Peter Mavia, was a legend in the wrestling world. On paper, it looked like destiny, but in reality it was chaos. Wrestling was not glamour back then. It was pain, long roads, broken bodies, and empty pockets. Dwayne watched his parents argue over money. He watched eviction notices appear on doors. He watched his mother cry quietly, trying to stay strong for her son. By the time he was 14, Dwayne had already been arrested multiple times for theft and fighting, not because he was evil, because he was angry, confused, lost. He didn't know who he was supposed to be. He didn't know where he belonged. And when you don't belong anywhere, you start acting out just to feel something. At one point, his family was evicted from their apartment in Hawaii. They had nowhere to go. His mother packed what little they had, and they left with no plan. That moment stayed with him forever. Years later, Dwayne would say that watching his mother struggle was one of the most painful experiences of his life, and one of the most powerful motivators he ever had. Football became his escape, his lifeline, his hope. He trained obsessively, lifting weights, running drills, dreaming of one thing: getting out. Getting free, getting his family to a better life. His hard work paid off when he earned a full football scholarship to the University of Miami. For the first time, it felt like the world was opening up. He was at the top, or so he thought. Then reality hit him hard. Despite his size and strength, Dwayne wasn't the star he imagined he'd be. He sat on the bench. He watched others take the spotlight. And then came the injury. A devastating back injury that ended his NFL dreams before they even began. Just like that, everything was gone. No NFL, no future plan, no safety net. He graduated college with just $7 in his pocket. $7? Most people would call that failure. Dwayne Johnson calls it the moment that defined him. He packed his bags and decided to follow in his father's footsteps, not because it was easy, but because it was the only door still open. Professional wrestling welcomed him, but not warmly. Fans hated him, promoters doubted him, critics mocked him. They called him fake. They called him forced. They told him he'd never be enough. For a while, they were right. Dwayne tried to be what everyone else wanted. He smiled when they told him to smile. He spoke the way they told him to speak. And the more he tried to please others, the more the audience rejected him. He was failing again. Then something changed. He stopped pretending. He leaned into who he really was: bold, confident, sarcastic, unapologetic. He became The Rock, not a character. A version of himself turned all the way up. Suddenly, the same crowd that booed him couldn't get enough. He became the most electrifying man in sports entertainment. Championships followed. Fame followed. Money followed, but wrestling was never the final dream. Hollywood came calling, and once again he was told no. Casting directors laughed. Critics said he was just a wrestler playing pretend. His early films flopped. He was labeled box office poison. The same story, new arena, same rejection, and again he refused to quit. Instead of blaming the industry, he worked harder. He studied acting. He showed up early. He treated every crew member with respect. He learned scripts like his life depended on it. He built relationships. He stayed humble. He stayed hungry. Slowly things changed. One movie worked, then another, audiences didn't just see muscles. They saw heart, humor, vulnerability, discipline. They saw a man who knew what it meant to fall and get back up again. Behind the scenes, Dwayne Johnson was relentless. He woke up before sunrise. He trained for hours. He balanced filming schedules with workouts that most people couldn't survive. He carried the same work ethic he developed as a broke kid with $7 and never let go of it. He made a promise early in his career: never forget where he came from. When his mother faced financial trouble again years later, Dwayne bought her a home. Not for publicity, not for headlines, because he remembered the eviction notices, the fear, the helplessness. As his fame grew, so did his responsibility. Not the kind written into contracts or demanded by studios, but the kind that comes when millions of people start listening to your words and watching how you live. Dwayne Johnson understood something early that many celebrities never do. Visibility is not just power. It is weight, and how you carry that weight matters. Behind the smiles, the blockbuster premieres, and the red carpets, there was a man who remembered what it felt like to wake up with fear sitting heavy on his chest. A man who remembered what it felt like to have a dream ripped away without warning. When football ended for him, it didn't just end a career path. It shattered his identity. For years, football had been his anchor, his escape, his proof that the struggle meant something. And when it was gone, so was his sense of direction. He didn't hide that truth. He spoke openly about hitting emotional rock bottom, about waking up feeling lost, about staring at the ceiling wondering who he was supposed to be now, about the quiet fear that whispered, maybe this is it, maybe you're not enough, maybe the best days are already behind you. Those thoughts didn't come from weakness. They came from caring deeply about having a purpose. There were days when he felt worthless, days when he felt scared of the future, days when confidence disappeared and doubt took over. And instead of burying those moments, instead of pretending strength meant silence, he chose honesty. He chose to tell the truth about what it feels like when the world stops making sense. He chose to say out loud that even men built like mountains can feel crushed under the weight of uncertainty. That honesty became part of his power, not because it made him look flawless, but because it made him human. People didn't connect to him because he was untouchable. They connected because he had been broken and still stood back up. Because he didn't sell a fantasy of constant confidence. He shared the reality of struggle and the discipline required to move through it. Dwayne Johnson didn't just become a movie star. He became a symbol of resilience, a reminder that success is not about avoiding failure. It's about surviving it, learning from it, using it as fuel. He showed that failure doesn't mean the end of the road. It often means the road is about to change direction. Every role he took on, every business he built, every project he led, carried that lesson inside it. He didn't chase perfection, he chased progress. He understood that setbacks are not signs to stop. They are signals to adapt, to grow stronger, to refine your approach. Today, he is one of the highest paid actors in the world. A producer with creative control, a businessman with brands that reach across the globe, a global icon recognized in nearly every country. But if you listen closely to his interviews, if you pay attention to how he speaks, when the cameras aren't just rolling for promotion, you hear something different. You hear humility, you hear awareness, you hear a man who knows that everything can be taken away. He still talks like that kid who had nothing. The kid who watched eviction notices change his life. The kid who learned early that security is fragile and success is never permanent. He knows that applause fades, that fame is unpredictable, that money can disappear as fast as it comes if you forget discipline. He often says success is rented, and the rent is due every single day. That line isn't a slogan, it's a warning. A reminder to himself that yesterday's wins do not excuse today's laziness. That comfort is dangerous. That entitlement is the fastest way to lose everything you worked for. He still trains like he's chasing something, because he is. Long before the world sees the finished product, long before the movie premieres or business announcements, his days start the same way. Early mornings, heavy weights, repetition, sweat, focus, not because he needs to prove anything to others, but because routine keeps him grounded, because discipline reminds him who he is when distractions try to pull him away. Training, for him, is not just physical. It's mental. It's a way to confront resistance daily, to face discomfort on purpose, to remind himself that growth lives on the other side of effort. That strength is built when you do what's hard even when no one is watching. He's chasing growth, not the kind measured by numbers alone, but the kind that deepens character. Growth as a man, growth as a leader, growth as someone others look to for guidance, whether he asked for that role or not. He's chasing purpose, a reason to wake up with intention, a reason to say no to shortcuts, a reason to keep standards high even when it would be easy to coast. Purpose for him is not tied to fame, it's tied to impact, to knowing that his story, his words, and his actions can help someone else keep going when they're on the edge of giving up. He's chasing legacy, and that legacy isn't just about movies or championships or box office numbers. It's about showing people what's possible when you refuse to let your worst moment define your future. It's about proving that setbacks do not cancel destiny. They shape it. It's about showing people that no matter how many times life knocks you down, you can rise. No matter how broke you are, how rejected you feel, how impossible the dream looks from where you're standing, there is still a way forward. Not a magical way, not an easy way, but a real one, not overnight, but one disciplined day at a time. That's the part many people don't want to hear. They want transformation without discomfort, success without sacrifice, confidence without failure. But Dwayne Johnson's story doesn't sell illusions. It tells the truth. The climb is slow. The progress is earned, and the work never really stops. His story isn't about luck. He will be the first to tell you that. Luck may open a door, but it doesn't keep you in the room. Endurance does. Consistency does. Showing up when motivation fades does. It's about choosing effort when quitting feels easier, when doubt is loud, when results are delayed, when the world is silent. Choosing to keep moving even when no one is clapping. Choosing to bet on yourself when no one else is willing to do it for you. There were moments when the safer option would have been to walk away, to accept less, to settle, to say maybe this is as far as I go. But he didn't, not because he was fearless, but because he was stubborn enough to believe that his story wasn't finished yet. $7 didn't break him, it built him. That number became a reminder, a reference point, a symbol of where he came from and what he survived. It kept him grounded when success tried to inflate his ego. It kept him hungry when comfort tried to slow him down. It reminded him that everything he has now was built from a place of nothing. And that's why the world listens when he speaks. Not because he's perfect, not because he's untouchable, but because his strength didn't come from muscles. It came from survival, from standing in uncertainty and refusing to collapse, from feeling fear and still taking the next step forward. His story tells people that you don't have to be fearless to be strong. You don't have to have it all figured out to move ahead. You just have to be willing to endure, to learn, to keep going. And in a world full of shortcuts, filters, and fake confidence, that kind of strength is rare. That kind of strength lasts.